Hello, welcome to Carol at the Social Canvas. I'm going to be painting this lovely dandelion. I took a nice close-up picture as I was out for a walk and it came out so well, it looks like a painting. So I thought, you know what, it deserves to be painted. I'm not painting that on a very small, a very large piece of paper here. This is canvas, acrylic canvas paper. I've just put a piece of tape here because this is a larger piece and I just want to do a small one. And I'm going to play with some different colours today because I want to see how it turns out. I'm using Winsor & Newton Galleria acrylics. I've got Farlow green, I have cadmium red, yellow ochre, raw umber, which is like a brown, titanium white, and some black in there somewhere. Mars black, that's right. Oh yeah. So I do have some blue too, which is not Winsor & Newton, it's just my Schola range. But you can't see blue in there, I know, but there is some tiny specks of kind of pale blue in there. So I'm going to make this a very quick one. As I said, I put the tape down there just so I can keep it clean. And then we're going to see how it goes. So brush-wise, I'm going to need quite a small brush for this area, but a large one for the background. So I'm going to do the background first. Now, dandelions always show up better obviously on a dark background because of the white in the dandelion, so that's essential. So I'm going to be very haphazard with my background and I'm going to put different shades in. I'm going to grab a little bit of white, always start with just a touch of white in there, and I'm going to mix a little Farlow green in there and a little yellow to make it a green colour. And you can see me in the small window. Hello, welcome if you've not been before. And I'm going to grab a little bit of that red, just a tiny bit in there, like so. Doesn't show an awful lot, but this is where I'm going to just mix different colours and go for it. Lots of water. And I'm just going to give my background just a loose overall look. Not enough water in there. Using my round brush today. I'm trying to go in different directions so I lose any paintbrush marks. I don't want any of those. And if you have to mix paint again and it comes out a different colour, I would not worry too much about that because you can add different colours in different areas. Anyway, this is a very fuzzy kind of out of focus background, so if you want to go over it with different colours, we'll do that anyway, that's not a problem. So let's see, back in there. As you can see, I'm lightening that up a little bit as I go along. It's a little bit lighter at the top here where there's some flowers. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of lighter. Again, I'm just leaving it very loose with my brush. Sometimes, you know, as I said to people, you know, I say a lot that sometimes we think about things too much. And if we just kind of paint loosely what we see, and with a very loose wrist, as I call it, then, you know, it turns out better in the end. Because if we think about things too much, then we just lose sight of what we're trying to paint. So I'm going to grab some more Farlow green in there. This is a little bit darker now. Still going to have a little bit of yellow in with it and a touch of red. This is a cadmium red, which will make it a little bit darker. And plenty of water. Obviously this is not my main focus of this painting, but I do want to make it look good, of course. You can get around these backgrounds a lot quicker if you have a lot more, a bigger brush. That certainly helps. There's a little bit more red, as you can see up in that corner there. You may not notice it that much, but I can see it. So I've just grabbed a bit more red in there. A little bit more white. As I said, I'm going over my edge, so I'm not bothered. As you know, acrylic paint does dry pretty quickly. You can spray some water with a spray bottle if you want to keep it wet for a little bit longer. But obviously, if you know how to work quickly, then that's the best thing to do. But if you're not used to that, then you'll have to go back and maybe do another layer. That's also an option. I always make less paint than I need in general, but that's because I don't like to waste it. But I'm really pushing it in there too. Trouble is with canvas paper, it's great to do practice sessions on, but it does take a lot to get the paint covered. Should say the white of the canvas paper covered, so that's the only downfall there. But you always have to make sure you got enough water in there too, otherwise it won't flow good. A little bit darker now. I always put a little bit of white in with it, even if I'm getting a bit darker, because it just softens it up. And as I said, this is kind of a fuzzy background anyway. I use kind of circle motions as well. You try anything to help it cover the white. Right to my tape there. Okay, so I've got it quite dark down here, which is what I want, and I'm just going to put some tiny amounts of that red in there. So I've got cadmium red, and I'm just putting a tiny bit of white in with it because I want it to show up just slightly. Let's see how that turns out. Again, it's not going to look awfully red because it's a very subtle tone red. I'm just going to move some of those bits in there. It's kind of like a pink really, isn't it? So let's get a little bit more of that. Looks quite a bright red when you actually get it out onto your palette. If you can see that, it's quite bright, but it's amazing how it tones down when you're putting it on. It doesn't even come out very bright if you're putting it on there. But if you want it on quite dry looking, then you will have to rub a lot of it off your brush as you're going along. I'm just going to try and push some of it in there where that reddish colour shows on the background. And there's a little bit of red up there too, and that's a lot lighter, so I'm going to get some of the white first. Let's see how that looks. I think here I'm going to try it out. It's a little bit too light. Still using a little bit of green, but you still want some of that red tone showing through in some respect or another. So let's see, that might be too light as well. Let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this red like this on, wipe my brush off well, grab some more white, a little bit of that yellowish green, and I'm going to start just going over that. It'll show up underneath just very, very slightly. All the yellowish green back in there. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that yellow with a tiny bit of green just to bring some of these lighter areas up here showing through. It's just kind of layering up on tones in the background more than anything else. And also because it's a fuzzier background, a little bit more yellow into that. Again, because I want it to be quite subtle, I'm rubbing it off my brush for the most part once I put it on. And then you can see how much softer that colour is going on there. Once you do that, lighten up a little bit more in the background. I'm bringing some of that down here. Obviously, if your paint's still wet, then it's going to be difficult for you to layer up until it's dry, unless you're working while it's still wet. And of course, then that you have to work quite fast if you're working with it wet, especially on paper like this, because it does dry quite quick. So. Got some more soft, so that's quite soft up top, but I've got it still some soft areas down here, which I'm going to keep working with. Wash your brush off if you've got too much paint on and you need to work with a cleaner brush. So here I'm just going to try and soften out with this, again, that cadmium red. I'm going to see if I can push some of that colour in again by just rubbing it off my brush. I actually want to have a little bit lighter tone because I think that was a little bit too dark. So I've just put some white in with that cadmium red. So it still shows through, but it's not too bright. A little bit here and there as well. Okay, I want it quite dark in the middle though, because that's where I need it to all show up. So I think that's good enough for now. So that's the basic background. So for the middle of the dandelion, I'm going to grab a different brush. And I'm going to get a small round brush for now, which is just a very small number 4 round. And I'm going to get sort of a dark, I'm going to get some raw umber, which is the brown. And I'm going to get a little bit of that cadmium red in there, just a tiny bit to give it. So mine's going to come straight right in the middle, and I'm just, again, loosening. I'm going to make this bigger than my picture here. And cover that well. with that colour. A bit more red on the outside of that, I think. A little tiny bit of white might help too, just to soften that brown up here and there, like so. I'll still leave it dark brown, but I just want the edges that are coming out of there softened up a little bit, like so. So I've got some burnt umber, a little bit of cadmium red, and a little bit of white just to soften those areas out a bit. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to again grab the my small brush here. You want fine lines on this, so any small brush will work. You can use wool. You can use, this is a 0, I think, very small one, and this is a what we call a rigger brush, which is long and thin at number 1, but can be tricky using the very small ones. But I'm going to see how I go first of all, because I want fine points on this. So my white needs to be clean, so just make sure you have a nice white, a clean white. And I would suggest, if you're going to do this one, copy it along, have a thicker grade paint, because the white will not maybe show up so well if you don't. This is a medium grade, it's not a professional, but it's medium. So I'm going to start from just the outside here, and I'm going to start by just bringing, first of all, just bringing fine lines out like so. Doesn't matter if they're not all showing as thick as each other, we're just trying to get the area in a perfect circle as best I can. If it's not working, as you can see, I'm starting from my middle section, because the paint on a very small brush tends to run out once you get to the end, because it doesn't hold a lot of paint. So that's good. Whoops. Well, that was a mistake, but that's okay. I'm not going to get too upset about it, because I can fix it. So I'm coming in at that one. It's going over some of these lines. I didn't touch the canvas very thick on that, so. Of course, you have to wet your brush every now and again. Roll that brush, if it's a thin brush like this, into your paint on the side of your paint. Okay, so as long as I've got sort of the symmetrical, nice round outside like that, then I can start adding the outside a little bit more. So I'm going to use the same brush, but I may switch to a slightly bigger brush. So first of all, I'm going to just go right on the outside, and I'm just going to do a little, doesn't matter if they're a little bit thicker here and there. I'm going to try and keep them thin if I can, but don't worry too much if they're. So we're going to try and keep a nice round shape, and you can double cover these, as I call it, as in, doesn't matter if you go over each one or overlap a little bit, that's okay. It's easier when you get to the top, that's for sure. If you're working on a flat surface, it's probably working out easier for you anyway. Assess how round you've got your circle there once you get some in, and then you can either add to bring them out a little bit just to make sure they're in a nice round circle. I think that's pretty symmetrical. Okay. I'm going to just fill in some of the lines, so I don't want a lot of green too much showing between them. I might leave some showing, but for the most part I'm actually going to cover a lot of those areas. So as I go around again, just leave the odd break here and there. Oops, make sure you don't get too much on your brush at the same time. And also, if you're using a thinner white paint, then you will show it will probably sink in a little bit to the dark background, so you'll have to probably give it another coat anyway. Trying to keep them all relatively perfectly round, but it doesn't matter if the odd one peeks out at the side. A little more thick on that. Okay, so I'm going to now bring some more in a little bit closer. So I'm going to just double that up a little bit by just overlapping some of these areas. I know it can get annoying when you have to keep going back to your paint and your water, but once you get the hang of it and you know what you're doing, you can just overlapping some of those as we go around. Probably get a bit quicker as you're doing this too. I'm going to get a couple more there. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to start doing some thin white lines in between these other ones now, so just all the way out to the end again, leaving some of the green showing through. And you can bring some of those white lines right into your brown section. Straight as possible. can always turn your canvas round if you find it easier to go from the other side rather than like I am. Actually coming from this angle, it's easier for me to come from the other angle, just trying to be very careful with my point though, so I don't have it too thick as I'm coming into that bit there. Okay, now there is some lighter green showing through here, so I'm going to stick with my white. I'm going to get a bit of yellow to the side. Have a little bit of my green if I've still got it there. I just want to make a very pale green, greenish yellow in fact. So I'm going to grab more yellow and a little bit of white in there. And I'm going to just put a few on this side of those lighter green ones, just in between, not where the white is, but in between where the green is, because it's coming through there a little bit, like that. So you see that shows up a lot better on that side. There's not really much going on this side, but I will just put a little couple over that side too. I think it looks, it's a very pretty colour, that one. And I might just bring a little bit, just right up to the ends here a bit more. And some of that dark green area. Right, lovely. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the white on the end of my brush and I'm going to start doing some little circles like this. I'm going to do some right in the center there, not any particular order to this, and then I'm going to start doing some right inside there as well. Random. I'm not, you know, trying to take too much notice as to where I'm doing them. I don't want them to be too uniform. I want them to be more loosely done, randomly placed, if you like. I've got quite a thick part there. That's okay though, I don't mind that. Okay, so once I've got those done, I'm going to again wet my little brush and make sure I've got a nice point on it by rolling it on the side of my white paint. And then I'm going to give little star bursts. So coming out from your little white areas, you're just going to pull with your brush little lines out from the side. Put my glasses on, see all this close work. Because I put my on my head and then I forget. Oh yeah, my glasses are there. Try and keep it fairly fine with your lines. I would get all the ones that you've got in, and if you feel like you've got enough or not enough, then you can add some more, I should say, afterwards. Always best to start that way than put too many in the first place. especially when you do the ones in the middle. Just try and keep those lines really fine if you can, by just not pressing too hard on your brush. You just got to really lightly dust your brush over the sides of the circle bit. Top tip is, if you've got like a little stick, branch broken off where it's just like a sharp edge, that's really good for using for little areas like this too. You can always sit back from your painting or step back from it to see how it looks, and if you've got enough, sometimes it helps to take a step back just to have a look. I'm going to put another one just here because I think it warrants another one out there. So again, do what you think is required. If you need to go over your white again, if it's gone a little sunken in, just go over those white areas again. But it's beginning to look pretty. Oops, it's a little bit thick. Okay, again, just go over those central areas if you find it's not standing out enough. Just give them a little bit more oomph. All right. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a prick of my blue, and I say a prick because I really don't want it to show up much. It's going to be a very subtle looking blue. And the reason why is because you may not notice, but I can clearly see on here that there is a touch of blue in it. In fact, I need a little bit more. Always good to start slow and then add up if you need to. So you can see it's a very pale blue here. I'm going to see if that looks okay. Just need enough water in with it to, again, so I'm just adding some slight touches of that colour again on to my outer side. Doesn't matter if you bring some in there as well. Overlap some of the areas, make them a little bit bushier on that side, right in the central area, not so much on the tips, and then it softens it. You know, we don't always see colours within, you know, what we're painting. We just see what we're painting rather than the various colours, but there are different tones in this painting for sure. I can see by the photo, but you may not see them as well. can't do it all the way around, just maybe just fill that in there. A little bit more white, a bit more water. Can be frustrating when you're working with a small brush, I know. All right. Now, if you're not happy totally with seeing through it a lot like you can add more of the starbursts towards the end here. Whoops, I got a big blob there. Let me just take that up. A few more of the starbursts to fill it out just a little bit closer to the edge here. So I'm just going to do more of those and totally. This was going to be a quick painting. I don't know if I can ever be that quick, to be honest. Try my best. Whoops, as I said. So just added a few more there and here, just towards the outer edge. A little bit more haphazardly, not because I'm trying to rush it, but just because these ones on the edge here don't need to be so fine because they're more or less in the thick of it. Okay, almost done. I think one more just down here a little bit. Trying to cover any dark areas right by the edge. So you can just add a little bit more deep cover on that edge there. Don't want it to look too grainy or anything. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. I think it looks okay. And I'm just going to do my stem. So I have some yellow ochre. I'm going to stick with my, well, medium-sized brush, which is a number 4, which I have paint on, so beware where you're sticking your brushes. And I'm going to grab, first of all, some white to the side, a little bit of the yellow ochre, which is like a mustardy colour. Make that a light colour, my white, and I'll put the accent on afterwards. So as you see, you can't really see it, that it's going up into the, so I'm going to just leave that to the side, bring it all the way, whoops, bring it all the way down, about the thickness of my brush. Bring it in a touch to this area, but you don't want to show it up too much. Just the impression that it's coming up there anyway. I'm just going to leave my bottom there just trailing off. So a little bit of burnt umber or burnt sienna is probably another good one I would suggest for this edge here, which is a reddier tone, but if you don't have it, just use probably not the crimson red. I would probably grab a cadmium red probably, but it just needs a slight reddish tone. As you can see, I'm trying to just go on that side here, and as I'm trailing it off as I get down to the bottom, because it's just disappearing there. You really can't see any of this in here, but I'm just putting a very, very, very subtle amount just between some of the... Okay. My final thing is I'm just going to put a few of those fuzzy yellow areas in the background, yellow and white, but I'm just grabbing some white and a little bit of yellow. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put a small amount of yellow like that. This is a lot more brighter actually, so. And then I'm just going to touch it like that. Probably go back in the middle again, but it gives it a softer look if you just touch it with your finger and then go back over it again. So I'm just going to do a few of those. Here and there. I'll do maybe some white ones. So they're nice and subtle. I'm going to leave that one to dry. So the white one, I'm going to leave it just to sit for a minute before I touch it, because the white will again disappear into the background and I don't want it to totally disappear. So I'm going to leave that for a second. I'm just going to do the yellow ones a bit more in the middle, like that, because you've got the fuzziness around the yellow. Because they will take a couple of seconds to dry, but then if I just now touch that, I've really fuzzed it out, which is what I was wanting to do. So I've just let it subtly dry a little bit, and you can see how I'm going to fuzzier. If you let them dry out too much, of course, then the fuzz will not be there. But anyway, that is my dandelion painting for today. I'm going to put my little initials on the side in white, yellow, whatever colour shows up for you. Whatever colour you want. Let's get a nice fine brush for that. And there is my dandelion painting. I'm going to take my tape off so you can see. Whoops, no, I'm not. Okay, I'm going to leave that because I've just made a mess. And that is it. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon on my channel. Au revoir. Bye bye.